Welcome to It's a Controls Problem, where we do precision guesswork based upon unreliable data given to us by those of questionable knowledge. I'm your host, Charles Johnson. Hello and welcome to another episode of It's a Controls Problem. I am your host, Charles Johnson. I am here with my bestest friend in the whole wide world, Matthew Vanberg. Matthew, how are you today?
Hello, best friend. I'm fantastic.
Oh, it's great. I love it. And here we're with a special guest who I've known for probably a couple of years now. We've been chatting on and off. Mr. Aaron Hastings. Aaron, welcome to the show.
Hey guys, thanks for having me here. I'm a huge fan. I'm glad to be able to make the podcast and hopefully impart something useful to the listeners.
Well, I think that I think that you are I think that you are great for what you do in the community at large, and I think that a lot of things that you're going to talk about will absolutely resonate with them. So, Aaron is the president and founder of Apex Consulting Systems. He's been doing that for close to 2 years now. I think you started in like May of 2024, if I'm not mistaken. So,
yeah, that's right.
Close to it. So, most people, Aaron, in the BAS world seem to kind of fall into the industry. So, normally I kind of give a larger introduction, but I really just kind of want to get into your personal origin into this industry.
Sure. So I was an office manager in working part-time, and I needed full-time work. So I asked a person that I had just known for a couple of weeks if he had any full-time work available. And he said, yeah, my dad's retiring. Do you know anything about air conditioning and heating? And I said, well, I can read a wiring diagram. Is that helpful? He says, oh yeah, it'd be great. Well, how did you learn to read a wiring diagram? I said, well, I was in high school and I bought a Super Nintendo. I wanted one of those fancy ones that has a rapid fire on it and a joystick, but I couldn't afford to buy one. So I scrapped some buttons from an asteroids table I found in a field behind my house. And I made the box in woodshop and etched the PC board with the book from radioshack. And he says, heck, man, if you can read a wiring diagram, you get better than half the guys that are working for me right now. I said, okay. So the first thing he does is he puts me on a roof. My first day on the job in 3 feet of snow in January in New Jersey, and gives me a 6-1 screwdriver and a voltmeter and says, tell me why that machine's not working. I'll be back in an hour. So he comes back and says, what do you got? I said, well, the voltage stops at this thingy here on the pipe. And it says in the wiring diagram, that's a low pressure cutout. So it's off on low pressure. And he says, that's awesome. And I said, what do you mean awesome? I have no idea what I even said. He says, here's the deal. I will teach you everything you need to know under one condition. You can ask me any question you want exactly one time because I don't have time to answer it twice. And I'll teach you everything you need to know. And that's how I got into air conditioning. And I did that for 7 or 8 years. And then I started looking at the building automation guys because they would come in with their soft shoes and soft hands. And, you realize you're not going to be good for climbing ladders the rest of your life, that you might want to think about this coming up in the future. So I hired on with a major OEM and I trained with them, took a pay cut, trained with them for 3 years. And when raises were not coming, because 3% is a great thing, they would tell you, then I would jump ship and I got 50% moved to someplace else with an independent integrator. And my career has been that OEM. And then the next brand was the shop was a Distech Niagara Allerton shop. And then in my last last couple of places where I was an integrator, I was the junk drawer. So the shop worked with Delta or with Distech or whatever, then I would do everything they didn't support. And my job was to give the Siemens Insight guys or the Delta sites or the Johnson N2 sites better service than they were getting with their local guy and make friends with them so that we could then migrate them to a project, rip all their stuff out and put the other vendors' stuff in there. So I got really good with a lot of different brands all at one time without training, just being kind of tossed in the deep end. And so I kind of fell into mechanical. I thought building automation would be good because it seems hard. And if it's hard, then that means it probably pays more. I was right about that, turns out. And that's how I got in.
I think that's an amazing story. I really Matthew will hear me say this, and I'll even say it to my students. Follow the bouncing ball. like the Disney sing along songs. Um, so, but yeah, so no, your skill level right there is something that can rarely be taught. That's something that people just kind of have that instinct in their head. Some people can be taught that, but I think in certain abilities in the industry, um, uh, you just have to have it.
So,
Um,
so I'll tell you that there's a mechanical aptitude that comes with everything, and that's true. However, I found in my case, like I really, and we'll talk about it, I guess, a little bit later, but it was really hard for me to trust the guys that I worked with in almost any of the, especially mechanical places that I worked. It was during the 2008 area, so I changed companies a lot because they kept on going bankrupt. But I did find that going online was very, very helpful. And so if you couldn't find the mentor locally, you could find it if you looked hard enough and made an effort. And we all stand on the shoulders of giants. So I am not afraid or ashamed of the hard work that I put in, but I'm also not afraid to say it wasn't just me. I had plenty of help along the way. And there's a lot of people that I could credit with that.
yeah, and you always give credit where credit is due. I'm also a firm
Yeah.
believer of that. But I still think that it sometimes it takes. I think that there are people that are made for the industry and some people that aren't made for the industry. Like,
Yeah, it's
but
true.
but trusting people is also really tough as well because as you know, where our industry is. We've got a
Yeah.
lot of gatekeepers out there. So,
Yeah.
just continue to spread the knowledge. So, you know, obviously you went into a lot of your kind of being a kind of like a jack of all trades when it came to controls, like understanding different systems and that being pushed onto you. So, you know, when what led you to the shift to become a consultant?
So everyone who has done building automation controls from the viewpoint of a bucket in a basement somewhere has seen something come through the pike that is going to be this great, earth-shattering, monumentally different change. It's going to do wonderful things. And meanwhile, the person who's in charge of making it happen knows from the instant they hear it that this is the most mind-bogglingly stupid idea. Who thought of this? Who was shameless enough to say this in a meeting full of people? And then how in the world did this get approved by people who have the financial responsibility to approve these things so that it comes to me that and try to make this magic happen? This is not an uncommon occurrence in our industry, unfortunately. And so, I mean, to be perfectly honest, it didn't seem like I could do a lot worse, which seems a little bit callous, but at the same time, it's a mess sometimes out there. And there's some guys that are doing really good work, but there's also a lot of people that aren't. So the goal was to provide a service that was meaningful and that was informed from the rubber meeting the road on the ground level all the way up, that would say, this seems good in a vacuum. However, your chiller is an absorption chiller, for example, and that means something different about your condenser water temperature set point. That's a significant thing. Or you want to put FDD on your facilities, and you're telling the facility that they have to rip out all of their MSTP networks. That may not necessarily be the case, right? That you have to go and rip and replace everything. It's possible to know if it's good or not, and there's things that you can do to assess that. And a lot of times a consultant doesn't have any field experience or any exposure on a nuts and bolts kind of way. So they tend to take the safest path and then lean into sales to push it through. It seemed like a more educated approach to bringing these solutions to the table, helping facilities bridge that gap, and then also making sure that it's done properly. Because it doesn't seem like a lot of people are able to know if they're doing what they need to do, or if they're doing it right, or if it even got done. They bought this thing and they don't even know if it was delivered or not, because there isn't anybody with the talent to be able to tell. So just being able to bring that level of expertise in a nuts and bolts way to the consulting sphere seemed really useful. And I found it to be very useful so far. A lot of the customers that I have are very happy with that.
Yeah, you continuously stay busy. That's for sure, and that's always a good thing, right? Like
Yeah.
when you're in that lull, that's as a as a former contractor, being on their own. I understand when there's a lull, there could be a problem. So too much business can be a good thing to have at times. So
Yeah,
um,
sometimes.
you know, you've seen the industry evolve like I have. Now, how has your personal definition of like a smart building changed from when you even started today?
I know So when you are new in the controls field, you're still getting your head wrapped around BACnet and what this means. You're more concerned with how things will function at all, and what you can do is more of a secondary thought, because I'm just not sure if I can actually deliver. Right? You sometimes don't get a lot of training, you don't get a lot of help. There's not a lot of mentorship sometimes, and so you're more concerned with functionality. But then as time goes by, you're noticing things like um, systems that run 24/7, overrides, simple things to do optimization. You realize and you start to learn about trim and respond logic, ASHRAE guideline 36 cycles, sequences, and those kinds of things that then they seem superfluous or they seem unnecessarily complicated. And then you realize, well, actually, if done right, this can save a facility tens of thousands of dollars a month. So that pays for a lot of other work, come to think of it. And so you're so busy saying, well, there no one's gonna, all the customers say that's too cheap, and it's, they're too cheap and they won't pay for whatever. But if you can make an effort to help them find that cash with some small wins up front, then you are able to pay for yourself, or at least subsidize yourself, by paying attention to the energy side of things. So a smart building can not only let things function, but it can actually have things function in an energy efficient way. And that is an aspect that I don't think I had, like a viewpoint I didn't have early on. It's something that I've acquired over the years of seeing things, go on and take place. That you can once functionality is not a burden to achieve because your competency's gone up a little bit, then you're able to see what else can I do, and you're able to make more exciting things happen.
Yeah, that's a great perspective to have. I think in some cases, for me, uh, a lot of the industry has evolved for people to accept more approaches for more open solutions. Um, I've seen where people just they love Network 8000. There's nothing better than that. And
Yeah.
trying to get them to to get on something else is not was not something they wanted to do. But now especially with the fear of vendor lock-in being so real,
Yeah.
people want more everything. And you see on LinkedIn where there's a big push for like a truly open system for
Yes.
people. And you know I have mixed feelings about that, not because of my affiliations with with like tritium and whatnot. um I think in some cases, I think that um, uh, there's going to come some logistic thing that we have not really thought about yet. So if this thing gets pushed out without some of those things being pushed out, I feel like, or fleshed out, I feel like in some cases, some of these newer concepts can be a bigger flop. And much like you talked about, you have MSTP that that could probably do some of this, and people are trying to get away from MSTP and go in IP, which now makes T1L really more appealing
Yes.
in certain aspects
Yeah.
than other things. You definitely see that kind of change happen, and now change is happening faster too than whenever we originally started. Now, I will say that in certain cases, certain things have just not been proven to be true.
Yeah.
Even 20 years ago, when BACnet was really starting to take over from LAN and whatnot, people were talking about from an integration perspective that, as far as controls were concerned, there'd be no controls. It's just, train and carrier and all them, everything's just going to be two wires and there's going to be no need for all these people. And yet here we are with
Oh
Distech,
yeah.
Honeywell, Schneider, with everything. And you still have carrier with iView and train, with their stuff as well. But like a lot of the stuff that people predicted, aren't really there. And now there's this push for that MQTT is going to become the new backnet,
Yes.
which I vehemently disagree with.
Yes.
I don't think that's going to be the case. But you know,
Yeah. Andrew
as
Andrew really got into that like a couple of weeks ago. It's really a good viewpoint he had there.
Yeah, agreed. Andrew's super smart. I
Yeah.
really liked him a lot. But speaking of fast, one thing that I struggle with as well, or I don't really, well, I wouldn't say struggle with, but I've had to learn very quickly is how do you keep yourself from becoming obsolete? So, like, what is your process for learning a new system or architecture to make sure that you stay relevant with the current times?
Yeah. So I have a couple of strategies. So one of them is I take really good notes. And if I'm working with a system I haven't done before, or if I figure out something new, then I'll take a bunch of notes, some screenshots, and even a video for myself, for my personal use, so that the next time, I'll give you an example. So I was called to a service call. Hey, don't go to your project. Go to the service call tomorrow. These guys are doing a job and they need your help. So I go there and they said, well, we have a Barbara Coleman system, Network 8000. We're ripping it out and putting in Schneider and EcoStructure. I said, okay. And they said, we ripped out the controls on this air handler and we didn't know it until we were 3 or 4 or 5 units down that one had the one outdoor air temperature reference for the entire building. And so now the building's nuts. And they said, I said, okay. And I said, so what we need you to do, we went and we figured it out. And we thought, well, instead of spending 2 days putting the controls back, right? Because we were 6 or 7 units down the line. We're going to have you instead go to this air handler. We picked one out. It's going to be the last one ripped off the network. We put a 10K sensor on it and installed it as an outdoor air temperature sensor. But you got to program the Network 8000 stuff to recognize that it's there. Okay. And then when you get done with that, you have to integrate it into the Invensys R2 Niagara Jace and then export it back in IP to Continuum. Okay. So, these R2 Jaces are vendor locked, right? To the individual, it's got to be an Invensys workbench on it. So do you have an Invensys server here? Yeah, we have it on the floor. Oh, okay. So you guys have credentials? Yeah, the guy who had the credentials retired 2 years ago. So can you break into it? I mean, we don't use it that much because the IT folks say it's Windows XP and it's completely insecure. And I said, you guys, felt like on National Treasure 2 when he holds the Aztec artifact up to the red camera light and then tells Riley he's got to hack into the red camera system so he can get the picture. He said, you could do that, right? He's like, well, yeah, but I'm just offended you expected me to do that. Like, what the heck are you guys trying to do to me right now? So I got written permission to get into that system because I had to hack into it. I used Mimikatz, which you can get off of GitHub, which you should be very careful with. Anybody listening, be very forewarned that your IT folks, if you have them, will be angry at you if they even hear that you know anything about this. And I hacked into their XP computer. It took me like 20 minutes. And they were really shocked and surprised. I said, yeah, that's why the IT folks won't let you get in. And then I got into the Barbara Coleman stuff using the Invensys server and made the whole thing happen in a day. And that was a day when I took a lot of screenshots and a lot of videos because I've never done most of that. I've worked with all those individual pieces, but not like that before. And so that's how I end up staying relevant, is because I make it a point to dive in. Sometimes it's done involuntarily to me, whether I like it or not. But then, I'm not going to remember how to do a back-end IP integration out of Continuum and into something else in 5 years. So I've got a video for myself where I can review that and say, oh, okay, that's how I did it. And it helps me to keep that knowledge in a semi-fresh way, right? You put it in a Ziploc and I can pull it out later and I can use it.
Yeah, that's nothing like never. Oh my god, not like XPSI. Yeah, let me tell you, like that right there. Like back in my day, you can't beat XPSI. Like to blow someone's mind that you could do block programming without seeing it,
Yeah.
um, is wild to people.
Yeah.
Just absolutely wild. But yeah, that's a hell of a that's a
And
that's a hell of a one to do.
now, you guys, I want to be clear. There are probably a lot of people listening to this podcast that have done far worse. They just don't happen to be on here talking. So I want to give my
Sure.
kudos to all the people out there. But at the same time, it just really highlights how hard it is to be a controls guy. It's really because you never know what you're going to get. And you're just, well, it's all controls, right? Why can't you do it? And there's this indignation for those who are in a position of authority to, well, what's wrong? Why can't you do this thing? I was like, oh my God, you don't even know what you're asking for right now.
Yep.
But it helps. The idea, the question was, how do I keep my skills sharp? And that's really how you just jump in as best you can. You take really good notes and make sure that you can backtrack later on and keep it someplace organized.
Yeah, like for me, especially now since, obviously I'm not in the field anymore. But for me, as a trainer, it's important to continue to understand trends and whatnot. So I do keep relationships with my students over time and kind of talk about that. But yeah, like there are times where I'm like, hey, I've got to learn this because it's not something I've done, and now I've got to do it. Like as you know, and I'll make the announcement now since I probably can. Um, I am speaking at Niagara Summit with James Johnson. We are
Nice.
co-presenting a an API/UX visualization. And so, he wanted to talk about APIs using the HTTP client driver. And I have never used the HTTP client driver. And I know that there are some people now that are probably going to listen to this and be like, what the hell do you mean you've never used the HTTP client driver? I don't,
Oh,
because
oh yeah.
I as you saw in one of my posts recently on Facebook, I don't ever assume that anyone has an active SMA, and so therefore,
Yeah.
I create a program object to give me what I need to spit out that JSON string, and then I can take that JSON string and do whatever really I need with that.
Oh, that's nice.
Um,
And for you too, I really appreciate the work that you've been doing here. And like you said, you've never used the HTTP driver, but that is like every day for a controls guy, right? Have you done this before? No, but if you leave me alone for like a half day, I'll have it all figured out. Are you sure? Yeah, that's like every single day for a controls
yep.
guy. I told a guy, you're learning controls just to prepare yourself. It's going to be like you're in a basement with a bag over your head and 6 people kicking you. And in a year, you'll have the bag off of your head and only 2 people kicking you sometimes.
Yep.
Just expect it's going to be hard, but you're going to get kicked on a regular basis. And I'm sorry, but you'll be a better person for it.
Yeah, that's actually that's a great way to think about it. Yeah,
it's hard. And if it's going to be hard, it makes it a little easier. Like your first brand is hard because it's going to be hard, but your second brand, you thought you was good until you got pulled out of your first brand and into your second one. And you thought you were good until you got humbled in dramatic fashion by your second brand. And you're like, okay, lesson learned. I'm not nearly as good as I thought I was. And then you become a little bit wary to your third and fourth brand, and it becomes a little bit easier as time goes by.
Yeah, it's a good, one thing that's a good process to have, I think, for people is just a good fundamental. And I try to express this as much as I can, where, if you have a good fundamental knowledge of how something should go, it doesn't matter the interface that you have, you should be able to then find it where you need to go. And if you don't have that fundamental knowledge, you will struggle more than others.
Yeah. Another thing that helps me to stay current is on my HVAC talk a lot. I'm the controls forum moderator there. So you can find me under my handle, number one fella. And so I have a thread, for example, out about T1L because it's a mature technology from an industrial perspective, but it's a relatively new technology from the building automation perspective. And so it's not that it exists or that the paper's good. It's that this vendor put this thing in and they tell you on lawn cable, it's not the advertised, 3,000 feet or whatever. It's only 180 feet or whatever the case may be. Like there's, your mileage may vary. And because we do this enough, we understand that you really need to hear firsthand accounts from the field, and being on HVAC Talk or being on Reddit, but HVAC Talk especially, it really helps with that.
With HVAC Talk, sometimes I will tell you, sometimes it's hard site to stay in.
Yes.
Sometimes it's hard to infer tone, right?
Yes.
Sometimes it really is. And
I'm glad you said that.
Yep. And you and I have had conversations. I'm like, what the hell is up with that guy? And you're like, look, hey, he's just trying to do this. If you navigate this way, go about it. Cause sometimes I'm like, I don't know how to take that. Cause sometimes it comes a lot of people there come off as really pompous. And I'm sure that that's not their tone. But when you read it, I'm like, I don't really understand. So yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned it because I want as many people to come because it's a great place. However, first thing is post a couple of things that are helpful before you ask for something, because people will notice that. If all you do is pop in and ask for something, then you will very often not get a response. I've been there for years, and so I'll post something and not get a response publicly, and then I'll get an email privately from someone I helped out 2 years ago, and I've got a Dropbox link to exactly what I'm looking for. There are really, really good people that will help you out a lot there, and they're very patient with you. However, like you were doing when you're a mechanical guy, they always say, well, what were your pressures? What's your superheat? What's your subcooling? Give me some data. I'm not looking at the machine and you called me to help you with this machine. Come to the table with some specifics and it will go a long way. And the guys there have been really, really good. And there's a lot of things, for example, there was a lot of crowdsourcing around a backnet router that happened a few years back. And now you have a backnet router that is half the cost of most of them, will allow you to toggle a backnet object to start and stop a capture and then email it to yourself from it's like the features that you have are great because it was the guys on HTalk that were saying it would be really helpful for this. And the vendor was very, very accommodating and an HTalk member. So beware that each school play, right? You move to a new address and the school playground changes, the dynamic does. There was a playground dynamic here. They value when you're competent. They'll tell you if it's stupid. They will do it shamelessly, but they don't hate you for that. They're just saying, a guy posted a Git repo with some open source stuff, and he says this is stupid because I launched it and then the first line it crashed because the install won't work. They don't hate your guts. They're just telling you. And of course, that's the kind of feedback that the guys need because maybe his setup is different than somebody else's. And that's the purpose of what we're doing here. We're trying to biotest these or to test these things. So I'll tell you, I tend to remember what I read. And so HVAC Talk has been an amazing resource for me. Not only when I read something, but I can go back and find old things and I'll ask questions. And making a little bit of a history with the guys that are there, just not a whole lot of effort, but Orion, Max Byrne, our Right Control, T Brewer, just some of the guys have been very, very helpful over the years. I would recommend it highly, but you gotta make friends.
Yeah, and that's it is a tough one. Like because like I get I put the controls in my email, so I get copied on all of them. And obviously, I'm a professional member there too. I like the site. In some cases, I'm like, I'll stay out of this one. I can see, I see they've already got a lot of answers. Don't need to, to pile on and stuff like that. Because some people will take it and do that, and you're like, oh, all right. There's just a lot here. So yeah, in some cases, it's a great resource, but you have to have thicker skin. And sometimes it helps to talk to someone who personally knows a lot of those people to kind of understand where they're coming from.
And if you guys find me there, you can go on there. My email's in my profile. You can PM me when you get off posts and get to be a member there. You can PM me and ask for a little help here and there, and I'll guide you around the site. I don't mind. So there's only one moderator on the forum, so I'm that guy. So you can find me, and it's not too hard.
Yep, I'm a moderator on another where the forum that I'm on, or the site that I'm on, is more based towards like straight Niagara and straight development kind of stuff. The DDC talk is the one that I go with a lot more. But I mean, like most of the time, it's just development questions. Or they're like, "Hey, I'm looking for this program object to this." I'm like, "Yeah, I did something like that. Here you go."
Nice.
Just kind of, and I like that too. So, let's go ahead and switch gears for a little bit, kind of talk about more on your consulting, so because that's why you're here.
Okay.
When you first sit down with like an operator, what's the one thing that they almost always misunderstand about their building that it's actually capable of?
I find so a lot of the times when I'm there, they have had a lot of problems over the year or years with their vendor. And so the vendor lock thing is a big deal. So they've been told that, you just have 3,000 to 5,000 alarms a day. That's just a thing. Okay. And then I'm like, no, give me like a week and I'll have you all cleaned up. There's only 1,100, 1,500 devices here. So then you're down within a week or two to 200 alarms a day. And those things are actually broken. And they're just like, why, that seems so easy. I was like, well, I mean, it wasn't that easy, but still, it's not like it was physically impossible. Or they don't know that by making some like ASHRAE Guideline 36 changes or some really common sense programming changes, you can reduce your energy costs in a measurable way that you can actually measure. And then you can go to management and say, hey, we are saving $3,000 a month. We are saving $12,000 a month, whatever the case may be. You can benchmark it before and after. And so we want to put that towards another project. We're going to bank that for 6 months, 12 months, and have $100,000 on hand to rip something out or to make another change, or there's a boiler or whatever. And the idea is introducing the customer to that mode of thinking that this is a possible thing, and then how to go about selling it, or I guess you should say presenting it in a way that a CFO understands, right? Because they all talk different languages. And so you need to be able to present it in a way that they understand. This is dollars and cents. Like you are not living up to your fiduciary responsibility by leaving this on the table, because you're going to increase the margins of your big box store by 4% a month, which in retail is a huge deal. Like there's different ways to look at these things and approach them, and they can view their mechanical systems or their facilities as a profit center instead of a cost center. I don't
Yeah,
know if that
that's
makes sense.
yes. No, it makes perfect sense. Yeah, I understanding, your clientele, I think is really important also to becoming a successful consultant too.
Yeah.
You'll find something like, hey, what's wrong with it, right? And they're like, oh, well, blah blah blah. Well, maybe you just need this versus this. And so, we've mentioned this term many times, being the trusted advisor.
And I'll tell you, it's a challenge, because the people, like I said, I started off with the guy in the basement with the bucket, wondering who the heck thought this was a good idea. Like that is, that means that a consultant is kind of a dirty word in some circles in the building automation space. So I have an inherent barrier when I talk to the boots on the ground often at a certain level, because they're like, oh, it's another one of those guys again, right? He's going to walk away with tens of thousands of dollars. And meanwhile, we're going to get layoffs or whatever. And then on the other hand, there is the CFO or management the types that are looking at the X's and O's and the dollars and cents, and they're not sure if they're going to get what they need from this relationship either. And so you really have to be able to bridge that gap between both sides to understand the plight of the boots on the ground, the mechanical realities that they're facing, as well as the material reality that it simply has to pay for itself. Like we can't be going spending money left and right. We have to invest, and investment means a return.
Yep, that's absolutely right. Um, Definitely nailed the head there. I don't have anything else to add to that part.
Okay.
I think you said that perfectly. It's hard. Yeah, like commissioning. Like if you hear like you're a commission agent, right? Like that's also, um, that's
Yeah.
also one of those words you're like, ew, I don't want to deal with you. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, but the fact is that if you can prove your knowledge, then it doesn't really matter your title, right? Like once you get past that barrier, then hey man, he's cool. Like he's a consultant, but I think he's more than just that, right?
Right. Or I've actually worked with a couple of good check CX agents, and so commissioning agents, and so they're not all miserable. They just get a kind of a bad rep, and then we hope that we have a decent one. And sometimes you do, and sometimes you don't. So, for example, at some of the sites, I'll try really early to, for example, I had a site where they're making layoffs, so their maintenance staff is half what it used to be, but the size of the campus isn't any smaller. So to be able to have alarms that actually tell them something means that their workload is drastically less, because they can get ahead of people screaming at them.
Yep.
So they actually, you think about this from their point of view, like, I need to make your lives easier. How can I do that? Because you guys are an important part of this process. Not only do I need you guys on board because you guys know what you're talking about, I need your input and your feedback, but you guys are, you guys live here and it's your house, literally. So I'm going to try and take care of you as best as I can. And as long as you take a collaborative approach, it tends to go a long way.
Absolutely, it does. So, we often talk about siloed processes, and in your experience, where's the most dangerous black hole where information gets lost between the provider and the end user?
There's, well, I'll tell you that a lot of not most of the time, but a lot of the time, it's a people issue, that there is a provider that can be of low technical quality, and therefore they say, they baffle them with BS to cover yourself a little bit. So
Yep.
they use a lot of techno babble. So they don't have anything to offer, and so they use big fancy words to kind of skirt that, and so there's something lost in translation. A lot of times, if there is some competency there, the problem is again with the people, that the service provider is not talking to the CFO and the management types in a way that makes sense to them, that they're not bringing this to them as an investment with an ROI that's measurable and provable. Instead, they're talking about spend lots of money on me, and then it'll be pretty, or it'll be fancy, or it'll be the newest. And meanwhile, the boots on the ground are like, well, why, we need raises this year because we've been we've had a frozen wage scale for 3 years and we can't afford to spend another $300,000 on whatever. The idea is they're not taking the needs of all the stakeholders into account in a way that makes sense to them and that addresses their needs. So a lot of times it's not a technical issue, assuming that there's enough competency there on all sides in order to make the ends and the means, kind of come together. But a lot of times it's a people issue that you have to talk to the people in the language that they understand and in the language that they, the world of their problems meets the world of my solutions. And so you have to make those two kind of come together.
Yeah, that's right. Technology is the easy part. People are the hard part.
Yeah.
That's that is one that that does resonate quite a bit. Trying to talk to people into solutions, and then they're like, "Well, I want to do it this way," but you're already saying this. Yeah, yeah, but I want like, yeah. Well, then I don't know what you want me to do. Like, sometimes you're bent over a barrel there because, like, look, I'm providing you with the best solution that you can have, and then all of a sudden it's like, yeah, well, I don't really know. Like, well, I don't understand. Like, I would never want to give someone a bad product because their idea is suboptimal. Um, and unfortunately, I think in some cases, some of those people have to just learn the lesson the hard way, right? And it's not
Sometimes, yeah.
one that it's not one that we want to do, and it's not something that we're proud of. It's like, okay, well, when this happens,
You know
I
who
know
to
that you're going
call.
to call me. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
You know who to
So
call when it goes belly up. I love you, but there's nothing I can do for you. You do whatever you want to do and you let me know when it's all done. Yeah.
yep, yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, it went the same. It went the way that I told you it was going to do.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
all right then. Well, you're gonna pay, and we're gonna, as I
Yeah.
say,
We'll be here.
yep, exactly.
Yeah, we'll be here. I'll tell you one thing that really helps too is, if I have to do A, B, and C, I will try to find a way to wedge in a D for, a fourth thing for the boots on the ground. Like, when I went through and I de-alarmified that site, I tried to tune up some of their buildings. So I
Yep.
said, hey guys, where do your administrators sit? The people that scream the loudest. And they said, oh, it's in this building, and this building, and this building. I said, okay. So those are the three buildings I tuned up, and they never go there anymore. They just are green all the time and no one screams at them. And the boots on the ground are just like, oh my God, thank you so much. Because we have, another 20 buildings to take care of, but these were the noisiest ones out of the bunch. And it's where our boss sits. And I said, yeah, I'm looking out for you guys. And you just, you try to address the needs, like real horse sense. Who are the stakeholders addressing their needs? It's really, really important.
Yeah. It sometimes it's not what you know; it's who you know too. Um,
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah.
and I think once you knowing your audience is super important, regardless of the situation that you're in. So recognizing that, what, if I keep these people happy, everyone else is going to be happy. It's like when you have a new construction site, right? Like, I
Yeah.
try to tell people when they're navigating this kind of thing, like, oh, well, let's start with air handlers and VAVs. I'm like, no, start with a
Yeah.
chiller plant first. And they're
Yeah.
like, well, why? And I'm like, well, because those are the most expensive
Yeah.
machines.
Yeah.
And if you get them humming along, they're going to be
Yeah.
like lights and hummingbirds, take nectar, and they're just going to hang around there the whole time. And then at that
Yeah.
point, then that gives you as much time as you need. And now they're in this chill water plant, like, oh, isn't this lovely? You can see this and that. It's super important to understand. So, what does a successful day look like for Apex when you are acting as a translator? I guess translator is a good word between like a technical provider and a non-technical owner.
It often includes a meeting with a bunch of people and sometimes a PowerPoint, um, which is usually quite helpful. But there's been other times, for example, I put AI machine learning into a chiller plant, and it was me and Keith Gibson, and he sends me a meme of Han Solo and Chewbacca in a text message and says, this one goes here, that one goes there, like just two guys in it making CMNet, old ALC stuff, talk back net, mapping the points where it's got to go. The idea is I don't always get to get into the weeds, but when I do get to, I really, really enjoy it. A lot of times though, you have to do the meetings and PowerPoints in order to get there, which is also useful. But it can be either one of those things. It can be talking to the integrators, making sure that, for example, the customer is getting what they want or what they need from their vendor, because they don't have the in-house expertise to know if their vendor is giving them what they need. And so I try to help them with that and make sure that they, do it in a way that's non-confrontational. I used to call the engineer when he would give me a screwy sequence and say, not written down and not on the public record, this is really, really, you might want to change this. And because you do it in a way that's non-confrontational and not on the record, then it goes a long way to building good trust and goodwill, trying to manage the people side of things. So I get a little bit of that as well.
Good. I think that's that was always a hard one for me. Like, I loved RFIs, just sending them because, like, you know what? I want people to know, like, that there are issues, and
Yeah.
because like I've gotten burned before, um,
Yeah.
that like I'd have a conversation with someone and we didn't write it down because we thought that this was just a friendly thing, and then like all of a sudden I'm
No.
like, oh, okay. Well, I got you now. So now, like, then I became like an RFI,
Maniac. Yeah.
maniac is good. I was going to say another word, but I'm like, you know what? Maniac sounds better. Um, and, and so like, yeah, like it would just like, it would be like, why are you sending all these? I'm like, cause you need to listen. Like, this is
Yes.
not right. And now you're going on the record. Like, we could have done this the easy way. But now you want
Yes.
me to do this the hard way. So
Yes.
like,
And that
sorry, not
we
sorry.
could have, yeah, we could have done it the easy way, is the part that you have to go through. Like, that's when it becomes a matter of respect. Okay, I understand. And I did kind of throw you under the bus, and I'm sorry. But I'll tell you, like, I've never once had a good sequence. I've had no, I just said I've had decent sequences. I've never had a really great one. It always has to change. So if I can do that with the engineer, hey, you might want to just revise this, and I have no idea where this came from. Oh, okay, yeah, then you can do it the nice and easy way. Or I can say that these like 37, like, why do you have the thing running 24 hours and then you have me also coding a freakishly bizarre optimum start stop sequence? It never
Yep.
starts and stops. Why
Yeah.
would you do
Yeah.
this to me? I could humiliate you in a second, but that's not cool. How we just talk about this man to man? We'll see how it goes. And oh, look at this. There's a new set of prints and the sequences have all changed. Isn't that great? We have no idea how this happened. We can do it the easy way. And I would rather do it the easy way. But sometimes they don't want to, and that's understandable. It's what they want to do.
I had this was it was a science building in St. Mary's College in St. Mary's County in Southern Maryland. And if anyone who's never been to St. Mary's County, think of a scenario where civilization ends, go about 20 miles further, and that's where you are. Um, like it is a whole like if you think of like the Blair Witch Project, it's kind of like that. Like, you're just like, I'm not really sure that I should be here. But anyway, there was a science center, and they had this air. They had five air handlers that got literally welded together with ERUs,
Wow.
literally welded together, and one of them actually served labs. And so that one said, "Hey, we need to run 24/7." Cool.
Yeah.
You know what I'm not doing? I'm not putting a schedule in there that they can do that. If they want to shut it down on their own, they can go ahead and override it. But I am not,
Yes.
I repeat, not putting a schedule in there. So
Yeah.
going through the commissioning process, the commissioning agent is like, "Hey, can we put a schedule here?" It runs 24/7.
Yeah.
But should have the ability to shut it down. They can by
They
right
do.
clicking and overriding. Like
Yeah.
like they could do that. No, but we really should have a schedule. I'm like, but they shouldn't change it. They're like, well, put a warning there. Like, really discourage them from doing it. I was like, okay, you want me to really discourage them? Fine. And this was our reliable control system. So
Yeah.
what I ended up doing was, like, they go to change the schedule for this unit, and all of a sudden I created a pop up button or pop up that came up with skull and crossbones, like circling around, and say, like, warning: attempting to change the schedule could cause potential harm to faculty and students. Do you wish to proceed? Yes or no? You
Nice.
click on yes.
Nice.
Are you sure? Yes. Another one. How sure are you? Very sure, not so sure. And then another one came up. I did like 11 windows in order to, like, and so, like, the commission agent checked their. He's like, this is annoying. I'm like, do you want to change the schedule? He's like, no, this is too difficult. I'm like, cool, good. I'm
Good.
glad that now you and I are on the same schedule, that we should not have had a schedule here in the first place. You
Yes.
told me to create something to discourage someone. And that's what happened here. So
Yeah.
are you going to take it off your punch list now as it being met? Well, we probably should simplify this. No,
No,
you
no.
don't get you don't
Yeah.
get both ways. Like either A,
Yeah.
where I'm taking everything out and we're keeping that just on off, or
Yeah.
B, I'm going to keep keep those screens in there and you're going to stop bitching about it. Pardon my French.
Yeah.
But so we kept them in there. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, like some of that stuff is just kind of like super, super tough to deal with. Like engineers, look, I get it, right? Like you went to college and you learned all these formulas over the 4 years. And so
Yeah.
therefore, with all your formulas that you have, that gives you the right to create these sequences of operations without ever having to step into the field whatsoever and creating it. Now, I mean that in a loving way, not really, but
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
but the big
Yeah.
thing is like, look, I get it, but you actually have to go out there and see what's going on.
Yeah.
And if an
Well, there has to
engineer
be an
is
ability to hear somebody say, "Are you
yes,
sure?" Now, let me
yep,
explain myself, and we'll just chit chat for a bit. And if you're sure, then you're sure. But I just want to make sure that you're sure because this does not seem like a good idea. And here's why: intelligently, I had an engineer give me a spreadsheet of 600 lines on how a large chiller plant with geothermal, snow melt, and municipal chilled water was going to work. And I was
yeah,
able to distill it down to a page and send it back to him and say, here's a page, not 600 lines off of a spreadsheet. It was not codable. What do you think about this? And he thought, this is great, right? It's good to have good feedback and the intelligence to be able to interact like that, which is
yep.
helpful, but it's not always existing.
No, one of the weirdest sequences I ever heard was space temperature set point shall be at which relative humidity is at 55% and space temperature dew point is 1 degree above reference soil dew point temperature. Um, let me explain that to the people out there because they just heard what?
Gook,
Um,
gook, yeah,
yeah, so this was like I don't know, 19 years ago now, I think it was, um, and in the long, long ago, as I call it. Effectively, what they wanted is they wanted to maintain 55%, relative humidity, and as long as you kept as long as you kept the space dew point above the soil dew point, so that way the soil was always drawing moisture.
right, yeah,
Um, that was the big thing. I'm like, why didn't you just say that? like
yeah,
you kind of like went in a circle here, and it was an
yeah,
archaeological exhibit. That's why. Like
yeah,
they paid like $7 million to house a tree stump that may have had a teacup underneath, and then before they could dig it up, they needed to pay for the building. So like
yeah,
they put in geothermal water source heat pumps in there and stuff like that. Yeah, so it's it's interesting when you hear some of these solutions. There are some really great engineers out there that are also
yes,
really, really well receptive to hearing the controls person come out and say, "Hey, look, I think I understand what you're saying, but this is what you're going to run into." Okay, what do you
yeah,
propose? Right? Like, and when you
yeah,
can work together with them, that's great. But like, what I don't appreciate is this authoritative and lack
yeah.
of you're like, oh well, I have this degree, I don't give a shit what you
Oh
think
man,
your degree is.
yeah,
Like I'm sorry, but I've been in the industry longer than you have, and
it's
let's
true.
go ahead and come up with a better solution, right?
Yeah. Yeah. There was a guy in H Talk that was talking about how he was working with an energy engineering firm that had a very particular design sequence. And he would tell them, this is going to break things. And they would say, oh, you didn't follow the sequence. Okay, we're going to leave for for a week and then come back and try it again next week. Like, wouldn't listen to anything. And it was driving everybody insane. So the boss says, you do precisely what they said. So they sit there in the office, they start up the machines, they open up the steam valves full open on a cold winter's day. The
Oh
entire
wow.
plant is shaking off the walls. Every steam is leaking under the boiler room door. The guy says, shut it off, shut it off. He's like, well, according to the sequence, there's a 90-second delay on how long it takes
Yep.
to shut. Like, shut it off now. I said, well, I can't because I coded it exactly the way. He says, it was the first time I've ever gotten attaboy for breaking something. And our contractor, our firm was contracted to come in and fix all the mistakes that were heavily and repeatedly documented way ahead of time to make sure it was very clear. We tried to tell them and they wouldn't listen. And again, it becomes an expensive mistake that doesn't have to happen. It just takes a little bit of reasonableness. Yeah.
That's right. I am a firm believer. I tell younger people, do what the sequence says. And
Yeah.
they're like, but I'm like, nope, do what the sequence
Yeah.
says, because the moment you change it, you're going
Yeah.
to own it. And I don't want that to happen at all.
Yeah.
So let's kind of switch gears a little bit. How about this? A new construction, so like a blank canvas versus a historical puzzle or a retrofit. So new construction for or versus retrofit. Which one, in your opinion, actually offers more opportunity for innovation in today's market?
Retrofit. Yeah, retrofit. And the
Attaboy.
reason,
Attaboy. Go ahead.
yeah, I'm preaching to the choir apparently. And the thing is that number one, new construction is not everything. Like there's most of our building stock is going to be here in 30 or 40 years. So that's the first thing. Second thing is that retrofits, honestly, for me, are way more fun because you don't know what the heck you're going to find, and it's just an adventure. I enjoy that kind of thing, and maybe I'm a masochist that way. The next thing is that people who already have their facility have already had a benchmark in their head of what they are getting. They know that they have to pay, 17 grand a month for power to run their chiller plant. They already know that, there's a known factor to this. So trying to sell them and say, well, if I could save you 3 grand or 5 grand or 20 grand or whatever, 100 grand a year, and this is how, and I can do it, I can show you, proof that this works, then it makes that sale easier for them because it's not pie in the sky stuff. Whereas a new building is who knows what. And I mean, I've been in a LEED silver building where they forgot to put the insulation around the third floor on the west side. So when it's 20 degrees outside or 2 degrees outside, it's 60 degrees inside the space, even though the thermostats are saying 30 on the walls. It's like on and on and on. The retrofits allow you to come through a building like that and to clean up a lot of different things. It makes troubleshooting a lot easier because the problems are already there. There's a physical reality to what the buildings are presenting that's already there. Also, a lot of times you are the hero for coming through and saving the facility staff because they have been saying something about this for a long time. And all I got to do is just say, hey, tell me what you guys see and I'll pass it along because I'm a consultant. And sometimes that helps to have people listen. There's been a number of times when I can present that for them because consultant's a dirty word in certain circles, but it's not in others. So if I can help them, I'm more than happy to do so. I find a lot more opportunities in the retrofit space for a variety of reasons. There's things to be said for the new construction because you can do cool things with new construction. But honestly, there's so much more stock out there of older buildings that you have a lot more to work with.
Yeah, the ability to take something that is innately old and make it to more of a well-oiled machine than what it even was in the first place, um, or even finding newer solutions to,
Yeah.
to that rip and replace that you have, I think I think absolutely, I believe that retrofits require more innovation. Like while while new construction can handle, newer sequences given better design conditions and stuff like that, I think being able to take, an older building and doing something unique with it to help improve efficiency, I think to me speaks more volumes than just a brand new building. Um,
And there's an
I have,
excitement too to trying to get BACnet at 38.4 over N2 wire and a retrofit. That's
yep,
kind of fun. Let's try this. I've never done this before. Let's see how it goes. I know,
yeah,
sometimes it works great, sometimes it doesn't. And the idea is that there are people that are technically proficient enough to find that an adventure, and there are others that are horrified by this and they want to avoid the risk at all costs. And the idea is doing it in a smart way, and you can have a lot of fun with that kind of thing.
yeah, no, absolutely. I did a building here in Charleston, and their chill water plant, they had two chillers, and one of them was significantly larger than the other. Um, but it was kind of hard to stop one and start the other one, at
Yeah.
if you needed it. So what I ended up
Yeah.
doing was I actually decided to, look at the weather forecast for the day and find out what the maximum outside air temperature was and start that chiller based upon the demand it was going to need.
There you go.
And therefore, while it seemed like, it worked great, both under some, sometimes maybe people thought about there was going to be low conditions, but I could put a false load in areas that were really kind of like unoccupied to kind of
Yep.
to keep it running. But yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, they ended up saving a lot of money, because of that alone. So yeah, I
I
think
love
that's
that
some of
kind of
those things
stuff,
you can
man.
do.
I love that. Like thinking outside the box. That's some cool trash, man. I just love that. I've worked on a ceiling hung air cooled chiller hung over a basement in an elementary school where they're playing basketball underneath the 25-ton chiller. Like weird stuff all day. I love
Wow.
it because if there's only one guy that can fix it, then he gets a raise. It just, again, you know, working on your chiller, big chiller, small chiller, they won't stage up and work together. Well, then don't let them work together. Have one
Yep.
start, and he works all by himself. Right? I love that kind of stuff. That's some good things. I like that.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, you and I have seen this too, like on Reddit, right? Like, you'll have someone that
Yeah.
will, and I tell you, this is the one thing that I don't understand, and I have to keep quiet there when I read some of it. Is someone's like, "Hey, I've got this thing here, blah 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 blah. I'm not really sure what to do because I think X Y Z." And like, you'll hear people like instantly start throwing ideas out, and I'm like, how has no one asked the basic questions of like, hey, are the like one of them was
Yeah.
a two pipe system, right? I
Yeah.
think, yeah, one of them was a two pipe system
Yeah.
where I was like, uh, has anyone talked about like, keeping the building running, while we're lowering while we're lowering the hot water temperature? Like, why are we not
Yeah.
asking some of the basic questions to do it? Or
Yeah.
even just the one the other day where someone wanted to do something like off a discharge versus space or whatever. And I'm
Yeah.
like, well, hey, how are the coils associated? Are they, um,
Yes.
is one, is the heating coil after the supply temperature? Is there a
Right.
separate discharge air temperature? I'm like, well, I don't know. Like, you're just making assumptions and and
Yes.
like, and putting this guy in trouble. But asking the basic questions to me are people just want to get creative. But before you get creative, understand what you're
Yeah.
actually working with.
So, Charles, I tend to be very pragmatic about this. So, when I see those things, I think it's great because it means that AI will feed off of that and I will be gainfully employed for the next 20 years because AI will have no idea what they're talking about.
Yep, like the mushrooms,
So,
right?
exactly like the mushrooms.
Yep, like
Yeah,
the
you
mushrooms.
go right on ahead and eat off of that. I'll be just fine. You guys will be all right.
Yep.
So,
So, what do you think is the biggest missed opportunity in new construction that could have been solved by applying like a retrofit mindset from day one?
I think the biggest opportunity is serviceability. That there is not a lot of new construction that takes into account the fact that you need to be able to work on these things in the future. So, for example, there was a university I worked at, and they were designing the facility, and they said, "Well, we don't want to have a large air handler in VAVs because it costs a lot. So we're going to decentralize everything, and we're going to put in a bunch of little fan coils everywhere. And this will be great because it's going to save us 27 or whatever percent off of the upfront install costs." Fortunately, the maintenance guys were involved and they said, well, we're going to have to hire a brand new guy to do nothing but change filters every month on all 367 fan coils in this multi-story building. Do you have another 180 grand a year to pay for somebody with benefits on a union pension to do nothing but change filters on a 300, yeah, that's serviceability. That does not come into the average new construction mindset that this is great. We saved, X amount of dollars on the initial upfront cost and they pay through the nose for the rest of their lives on making sure the thing runs. And so they don't think about it. Whereas when you're on a retrofit application, they're living with the responsibilities, the consequences of that. And the serviceability argument becomes much easier because they're living that reality every day.
Yeah, I think like that is a really good one where people think that they're going to like value engineer something, but
Yeah.
like ultimately it ends up costing more in
Yes.
labor than what they're ever going to do. And it's like, if
Ever.
you just did it this way, then we wouldn't have needed the ability to do that.
Yeah.
Like I had like when you hear like VAV system versus VVT, like
Yeah.
I remember there was a new construction I did several years ago where it was the air handler was set up as really literally as a VVT. Um, However, they made everything become VAVs. I'm like, well, I don't understand, guys. Like, you want to maintain airflow, you're doing this, but there's no heat in the boxes. It's all
Yeah.
the heat's all in the air handler. I'm like, so you can't have a VAB. You have to
Yeah.
have a VVT system here, guys. Like
Yeah.
this is not what you need to do. So then I then made it a VVT and they're like, well, but now we're not maintaining, airflow properly. I'm like, you can't.
Yeah.
You've made them cooling only boxes that
Yeah.
only have heat from the air handler. I'm
Yeah.
like, if you had heat on the perimeter and and cooling on the interior, then I probably could do something with this. But
Yeah.
you tied my hands behind my back, and
Yeah.
therefore I'm going to make this exactly what it should be.
And
Um,
barometric dampers are cheap, guys. I can show you how to put one in. It's not that
yep,
bad. You need to maintain airflow. You can put a barometric on there and you can get your airflow. I'm just saying. It will be great,
that's
but it's better than what you got.
That's right. Absolutely. One thing I saw, uh, this was a real missed opportunity. It was on a new construction site, and they wanted to put in an Eclipse system. And I was like, hey, so where are your PoE switches? What?
Yeah.
Well, uh, your for your access points for this wireless system. Well, everything can talk to one another. I'm like, yeah, it's not Wi-Fi mesh, guys. This is not
Yeah.
like we're gonna need it. So yeah, they missed two big switches, and even then they only had one Jace, but 250 devices. I was like,
Oh my.
we're missing at least one Jace. I'm like,
Yeah.
realistically, I probably want an additional two to offload that kind of stuff. Um,
Yeah.
but I'm like, I can get away with an additional one. So it was some
Yeah.
things you're just looking at, you're like, man. Um,
Yeah.
Speaking of plan and spec, what is one thing if you could mandate a change in a way that bid that that plan and spec jobs are written? What would you mandate for it to be beneficial for both the owner and
Yeah.
the contractor?
Yeah. So one is that operations, somebody who is going to service this building has to be in the initial construction phase. And at some point, there has to be a voice at the table that says, we will have to service this uh, early, as in very, 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 very early. That's probably the first and most important thing. There's something to be said for not having the low bid requirement in certain spheres because it drives, there are companies and controls contractors and mechanical contractors. I remember there was a guy, I used to do service at years and years and years ago. I was doing service at a restaurant, and I said, "How come we didn't do the install here?" And the guy says, "Well, because we bid the job, and the install cost for the other guys came in at half of our materials cost." And I said, "Really?" So I go there, and they've got all residential equipment, and they've got like the cooking grease on the vap coil. You got to clean it with a condenser cleaner, and just it was insanity. And the idea was that they were looking for low bid, and they may have even been required to go low bid. And so then they ended up getting what they paid for, which didn't serve anybody because the boss was like, "We've made more money servicing this place than we ever would have on the install because we're always there fixing this place." And it really comes back to bite you when there's a low bid requirement. But then the inverse of that is, how can you tell if you're getting what you need? Because it's possible that your low bid contractor is just going to charge you more and give you the same garbage. So I don't know necessarily how to fix that, but it does seem like there's an incentive there for mediocrity that would be good to remove if at all possible.
Yeah, but there are opportunities for customers to take preferential. Um,
Yeah.
They some can do that, but yeah, it could be that the price is too costly, right? Like
Yeah.
sometimes if it's too good to be true, it is.
Yeah.
I saw a bid in some oh my god, I can't remember what it was, but there was a contractor that came in $250,000 less than any other contractor there was. And
Yeah.
come to find out, they were able to convince the owner, well, hey, everyone else had um, fire
Oh
smoke
my.
systems in their thing, but it didn't seem to be a part of our specification, so they left it out. Um, and then the
Oh
owner was
my.
like, well, actually, we want it to be a part of the system now. So then they end up paying like the additional 250 grand that was needed just for that. But like it could have been a real That was a real slippery slope. I'm like, man, you might be on the hook for that, but
Yeah.
if you can convince them, then that could be a big thing.
Yeah. And I
Speak.
think a lot of like government work specifically, government work requires a little bit specific, and then you go to some public universities or some public buildings, and there's 4 or 5 different brands on the same campus, and none of
Yep.
them talk to each other, and they've got a terminal for each building, and it's just, you're losing load shedding, and you're losing trim and respond logic, and you're losing all these things that you could have if you just had, if it was just 10% more expensive, you'd save 30% in your operations. And that's just not a thing that can happen because the mediocrity is incentivized early on in the process. I don't know I have a solution to that, but I see it a lot.
Yeah, the sometimes the problem when you have multi vendors on site, sometimes they prefer one vendor over the other and
Yeah.
make it extremely difficult for you to get in.
Yeah.
That project for St. Mary's College that I was telling you about, um, we only got approved. They're like, I'm approving you because the engineer is telling me to, or the customer
Nice.
is telling me to. Otherwise, I'm not going to approve you. And
Yeah.
I'm like, are you serious right now? It made it so weird to do. Um, and then like even at that particular point in time, no matter what happened, even like the tiniest blip of information that could have happened, some small mistake that normally would have been trivial, and people easily would have allowed it to go through. Um, they made a mountain out of a molehill. And so,
Yeah.
unfortunately, with that, uh, really just made it um, super difficult to do. And it was just like, man, if you could just leave
Yeah.
that out for a little bit, that'd be great.
Yeah. Check the egos at the door and just kind of get along. We had a job where the customer told the company I was working for that they can core right here and put a conduit through the floor. They marked it with paint, and we cored through it and went through a conduit and took down a third of the building. So the facilities manager's like, he says, word for word, I am not going down for this. So I'm going to throw you under the bus, and this is how I'm going to do it. And I'm just like, oh my God, like what the heck with the people here? Like, this is why I stick to machines, because people are nuts. And then as time went by and I went through the rest of the project, because we didn't lose our shirts necessarily, he started to realize that I was actually making sure that they were taken care of. And so, we would do a cutover, and I'd stay over, we were there for, I'd be 18 or 19 hours, making sure it was all right before I went, before I disappeared for the rest of the day. And the next time something bad like that happened, he would start off the same way and say, yeah, I'm not taking the fall for this. I'm going to throw you under the bus, and this is how I'm going to do it. And then he would wait and look at you, and you would say, so what can we say? And he would say, oh, I'm glad you asked. Well, what you can say is this, this, and this, and this. And that means that there's nobody to blame. So you won't take the fall either. And you're like, what a bizarre relationship. But I'm still grateful because I don't want to get raked over the coals either. And yeah, it was just nuts. But competency tends to rule that conversation eventually, because if you can deliver, then you make friends, because no one wants to get, no one wants to wear it when it's bad. So yeah, usually competency does a lot to help with that.
Yep. One last question I have for you, and this is something that I think about often as well, like, putting your stamp on something, like leaving that kind of legacy. Like I'm hoping that what I'm doing for the community at large, not with this podcast, but like with education in general, that I hope that when I'm gone, that that does still linger on. So like when you specifically look at the landscape of smart buildings, like let's even say for like a decade from now, like what do you hope that like Apex Consulting, what do you think? What are you hoping that Apex Consulting
Oh
stamp
my.
does for this industry?
Oh my. Like I really want to feed my kids and spend as much time playing with them, like to get above and beyond that. I'm a real simple person for that kind of thing. I will say that larger than that, like you mentioned education several times. So you're talking about training specifically. I really like being on HVAC Talk because I can help people there. I also have a website called Writing with a Senior Tech that I'm putting up training for more advanced building automation topics. So that's a thing that I'm coming out with in the next couple of weeks. And so the goal here is to ease, if I can take one of, get one person to stop kicking you and maybe get the bag off your head because you've got a person that you can ask some questions of, then I want to do that. So that's kind of the thing that I would like to be able to do. I know that eventually there's going to be a lot of people that are going to age out of the industry, and it's going to leave facilities in a bind with these legacy systems. The
Yep.
talent that's needed to deal with them is going to go away, and that's just life. It's the way it's going to be. And people that are saving the penny now are going to pay for it in dollars then, because an expensive rip and replace is all they're going to have. They could have done it in a phased, orderly process now, but they're going to get the I'm stuck over a barrel premium added to it in the future. And it's not my call to tell them to do it differently. I would like for them to do it differently. I think that they would benefit from that. But if there's some way to mitigate that, because what's going to end up happening is that mean that there's going to be a person there who's looking at this and wondering what the heck is a is this PMI NCM? What is the heck is this thing, and where did it come from? How long has it been here? I would love to do that. So I would like to do education to help with those kinds of things. In the larger scheme of things, though, I know that my ability to influence the industry as a whole is limited. There's only so much that one person can do, but I will do my best to make it as easy as possible for the friends that I got in the industry.
Yeah, that's a good way to think about it. So, well, I don't have any more questions right now.
I got one. So in the industry, you've got a hill to die on. Everybody else in the industry could completely disagree with you. You got a hill to die on?
You have a very philosophical viewpoint on a lot of these things. I am very sure that Modbus needs to die. I don't think that everyone disagrees with me on that, but I know Charles does, and that's okay.
Oh boy. Okay. Oh, no. Go ahead.
I'm not going to argue with you on this. I would prefer that it not be around. And I should take that back. There's use cases for it in like hyperscale data centers where you need data to communicate, but you can't fuss with a limitation of backnet device instances and other things. You need the simplicity of Modbus. So I guess I just talked myself out of that one. Never mind. Yeah, I had to think about that for a second. I will tell you. Oh, you know what? I want to say that it's a controls problem is a thing that I really enjoy. I embrace that. It is not a negative for me. That when people call me when it's not, my chiller's down, my whatever, I can. Well, the thing is I'd be more than happy to fix your chiller. But, I had it happen where I went into a job where it was an iView system and the HVAC guy says, hey, this thing is broke. They say it's a controls problem. I go over there and say, it's not a controls problem. And he says, we can't tell the customer that. They're going to lose their minds. So I'm parked across the street on another job. I'm going to leave my van unlocked. You can have whatever you need, but you need to make this go away. Okay, I could do that. So I go and get gauges. I get hooked up to this thing, and turns out the low pressure safety was stuck open and it wouldn't run. I'm like, where am I even going to get this around here? I don't even know where the supply houses are anymore because I've moved different states. Oh yeah, you can go here and here and here. He was grateful. And the thing is that when you're a controls guy and you can do that, then it's a controls problem means that I am gainfully employed forever. So please give me the weird stuff. Please give me the old stuff. Please give me the hard to fix stuff. Make it a controls problem, because then I stay employed forever. It's a great thing. So I love that about, and I don't know if anybody's going to disagree with me on that, but I will die on that hill for sure.
And for the crowd here, that's for as far as the Modbus goes, Aaron and I are part of a Facebook group, and someone was bitching about Modbus, and he's like, yeah, Modbus needs to go away.
Yeah.
And I went and told him, that I, I like Modbus integrations really over any other integration. And then he was talking about liking mayonnaise. I'm like, no, mayonnaise is an abomination. And I think it was like Tony Zismo. He was like, I like mayonnaise. I'm like, okay, yeah, sure. You know what? Okay, cool. Cool story, bro. But no, so it's not that I think that Modbus needs to go away. I find Modbus integrations easier and less frustrating than even like a backnet integration. People.
You have said that they're fun. That you have the most fun doing those.
I love Modbus integrations. I love doing them because to me, it's like I also have a really good understanding of Modbus than what a lot of people probably do. Um, and the reason why I do is uh, for one of the first companies I worked for, one of the things that we had to learn a subject and present on something we had never done before. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna learn about Modbus, and I learned everything I could about Modbus. Um, and one of the unique things I did was they decided that they wanted to control ABB drives, and these were like old ACH 550s, like well before even like the Eclipse bypass was even on them. So we're going back a ways, and it was a reliable control system that did this. And so they didn't have a way to actually just write to like the enable coil. I actually had to send the whole entire word down. So I actually had to um, create a subroutine to actually set specific registers to a specific value just to get it to run, which I thought was amazing. But for me, I find some backend integrations really difficult because
Yeah.
you should be able to put them all on the same trunk and it all should be okay. But I find that I never find that. I find that's rarely ever the case.
I was going to say,
Yeah, tell him why he's wrong. Argue.
Matthew's like, fight.
I
to
know.
the death.
That's exactly. He's like, fight. We're back in high school again. Fight. I'm going to tell you that the number one reason why you mix vendors on the same bus and they don't talk amongst themselves well is because the EPDU timeout needs to be adjusted. And a great example is if you put Distech and Johnson on the same bus, the Johnson controllers are usually far slower than the Distech ones are.
Yes.
And you have to increase your APDU timeout so that the Johnson controllers can slowly get around to answering without falling offline. Because what happens is they get flagged as offline and then they don't get the token and then they don't chime up like they should. So that is usually the biggest and easiest fix for that. And of course, knowing what to take it to and how to take it there is a whole nother story. But yeah, it's not impossible to get around that under, I think, almost any circumstance. I've never had it happen where I couldn't get two vendors' stuff to just never talk. I will say it would have been easier to isolate them, but having them never talk is not a thing that I've ever come across.
I'll put people in their own sandbox, like a backnet router. I'm just like, you know what? There you go. Fine, have at it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, it's like the way you explained it. And I know this may sound like a dig to Johnson. Sorry, Douglas. I'm not trying to dig at Johnson here. But it's like watching two people read a book, and then like you're waiting for the other one to turn the page, but you're already finished. So now you're waiting for them to catch up before the page can be turned, and then they need to reread again. You're like, well, hey, how come you're not reading yet? Well, we're just waiting for you to catch up before we.
Oh, it's so true. I have an HVAC talk thread called Visalia Weather Station PSA from a few years ago. I actually looked it up. It's from 2000. No, it's from 2021. And I just went through integrating Modbus to this thing. And it was Modbus RTU. The voltages it gave me was like negative half a volt and positive 3.5 volts. And that was okay. I thought my MSTP adapter was broke. Like the registers were all off. Like it was on and on every level. And I finally went through and I try to be nice, but at the same time you have to be straightforward and just say like, you guys have made this as hard as physically possible to integrate this thing. So I want you to know, like, maybe if you fix this, if you didn't require me to use Windows 7, even though it's been out of dead for 4 years, then maybe it'd be a little easier for people to integrate your stuff and you'd sell more of them. I was trying to be nice about it, but still, like the Modbus world, it gets very sketchy very, very quickly. And there's not a lot of fail-safe in there, right? It's not intended to come back and say, I'm here. I know it's hard, but I'm here. No, it doesn't talk to you. It has to be precisely right on several different fronts to give you anything. And then once it gives you something, it's usually garbage until you massage it for a while. And the documentation is sketchy and just on and on and on and on. You can go Modbus TCP and kind of even the physical interface out a little bit. And I'm one to say, I just said it just a couple minutes ago, like, give me the hard and the weird. And that's true. And if there's nobody around, well, yeah, and that's true. But at the same time, if I don't have to have it be hard and weird, right? If I don't have to be hard and weird, I'm more than happy to do that, So that's my thing.
No, I get that. It's one of those where the more experience you have with something, then the easier it seems to be. But yet, for people that only see it like every once in a while, yeah, and you're right. Manufacturers don't do the same Modbus the same way, and even devices within manufacturers aren't necessarily done the same. Part of it is the puzzle, but like again, like once you have a good understanding of what to ask, like even when you call a manufacturer, they don't know Niagara, but they know Modbus. So like at
Yeah.
that point, if you can speak Modbus to them, like, hey, I need XYZ. Oh, well, you have to do something this way.
Like I said, there are hyperscale data centers where, and of course, there's something to be said for the barrier to entry to Modbus is very low, so that you can get data out of a device more cheaply than you would if you have to go through BTL listing and all those
Yep.
other hurdles.
It's royalty free.
Yeah, and the stuff is like the backnet stuff is predictable, but there's a cost to that. There's a cost to make it that way, and that cost is not there for Modbus stuff. And if you can standardize, then you can have your life. It's a hassle the first time, but then after that you can repeat it. Like there's ways to get around it, but yeah, like you said, I feel their pain. So I guess I'm gonna have to demand in that whole thing with hyperscale data centers. I talked myself out of it, but the other thing for sure. You guys,
Well, Aaron,
I really thank you for taking time for me today. I really appreciate it.
yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure for you to be here. I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation.
Super duper.
Thanks for joining us, Aaron.
And that's all we have for this episode. Remember to stay curious and be a champion for both sides of the table. Until next time, I'm Charles.
And I'm Matthew.
And this has been It's a Controls Problem. All right.
Because I'm like doing it while you're talking. I'm like, oh my god, shut up, quiet.
Yep.
Okay,
Nope.
yeah, so
It's like a Ben Stiller movie.
yes.